Kevin, Canty, and Michelle are unsportsmanlike.
Jaylen Brown against Luka, knocks down Luka, but the foul's going to be on Luka, and he just fouled out of the game. Luka Doncic with his sixth foul disqualifies with 4:12 to go.
We couldn't play physical, so I don't want to say nothing, but sixth foul in the NBA Finals, come on, man.
He is costing his team because of how he treats the officials. His performance in this game is unacceptable, and the reason why the Mavericks are not going to win. He's got to get over this, and the fact that he came out after the game and blamed the officials showed me he's nowhere close yet.
With 4 minutes and 12 seconds to go in an NBA Finals game number 3 last night, a game won by the Boston Celtics to take a 3-0 lead, Luka Doncic fouled out of the game. At a 93-90 game, he fouls out. We're on Sportsmanlike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Round out your protection with life, phone, and pet health insurance. So Luka had 27, 6, and 6 last night. Sounds great on the surface, except when you look at what he did late in that game. We all understand the fact that he's banged up. He's been taking the pregame shots to make his body feel okay, so nobody is doubting that he's not physically 100%. Period. Next sentence. Nobody at this point of the year playing sports is 100%. But Luka fouls out of a game within a 22-2 Mavericks run to actually come back. They were down 21 points late in this game after being up 13 early, and Luka fouls out, flopping all over the place, and had this to say post-game.
No, I don't want to say nothing, but, sixth foul in the NBA Finals, where I'm like this. Come on, man. Better than that.
He's complaining about the officials post-game because he fouled out, to which definitely triggered this thought from Brian Windhorst, the ESPN NBA insider, with Scott Van Pelt on SportsCenter last night.
I thought it was perfect that Luka fell onto the ground there in an unacceptable position to put himself in with 4 minutes left with 5 fouls, and then immediately looks at the bench and says, you better bleeping challenge it, as if it's the bench's fault that he just made a terrible play. I'm standing here in the Mavericks tunnel. Over there is the Celtics tunnel. That's where the winners are. If Luka's ever going to be a winner coming out of this tunnel here, he is going to have to use what's happened in this finals as a learning experience. His defensive performance is unacceptable. He is a hole on the court. The Celtics are attacking him. They are ahead in this series because they have attacked him defensively. And you've got a situation here where Luka is complaining about the officiating. They have begged him. They have talked with him. They have pleaded with him. He is costing his team because of how he treats the officials. He's a brilliant player. He does so many things well. They are here because of how he did. His performance in this game is unacceptable, and the reason why the Mavericks are not going to win. He's got to get over this. And the fact that he came out after the game and blamed the officials showed me he's nowhere close yet. So maybe over the summer, somebody will get to him, because nobody with the Mavericks or anybody else in his life has. And that's where the Mavericks are at this point. They're never going to get to this tunnel with the trophy if he doesn't improve those aspects of his game.
Really strong stuff there from Windy, but he's absolutely right. Luka does this all the time. So I'm not surprised that it's still present in the finals. But we just praised the Boston Celtics for having growth over the past few seasons, and that's why they've arrived at this point. And Wendy's absolutely right. If Luka is ever going to take that next step, this is part of his game that he's going to have to keep in check. And the fact that post-game, he's complaining and blaming the officials rather than saying, I take responsibility, I put my team in a bad position, and it's inexcusable, and moving forward, I'm going to be better and we're going to be better. That shows me that he still has a lot of growth there that needs to happen. And Wendy's absolutely right, too, about the defense. Luka has been struggling defensively. It's been an issue for him. The Celtics are totally blowing by him. 67.7% of the time, the Celtics are blowing by Luka. That's the highest blow-by percentage allowed on drives by a single defender in any playoff in the last 10 years. And guess who was before that? He's number 2 on the list. It was Luka. First round versus the Clippers. This is an issue for him, in addition to the way that he complains to the referees. If he's ever going to maximize on the talent he has, these are some adjustments that he's going to have to be aware of and change.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we got to give credit to Jaylen Brown, too. I thought he did a sneaky good job of being able to get those 2 fouls on Luka. There was one where obviously Luka had the block charge, but then also when Luka's trying to defend him in the low post with about 4:40 left in the game, like he's able to get that call while Luka's trying to hook him as Jaylen Brown's going to make his move. So Jaylen Brown, really, really savvy, knowing time and score situation, knowing Luka Doncic has those 4 personal fouls and being able to get 2 quick ones on him to get him out of the game. I thought that was really great on Jaylen Brown's part. But going back to Luka, I mean, defensively in the postseason, but specifically in this series, he's been a cone. You know, like Pat Beverly calls him a cone. Like, he's been a cone. That has been Luka Doncic. They have been blowing by him. Nuno, our producer, gave me the blow-by stats from Luka Doncic. They were absolutely awful in this series and have been throughout the postseason. And this finals becomes somewhat of a referendum on Luka Doncic in terms of whether or not his style of play can allow you to have success. And, Ev, you were talking about how it seems ridiculous that we highlight the fact that Tatum and Brown are two-way players. Everybody in the NBA has to play defense.
Right.
So everybody, by nature of it, should be a two-way player. But the opposite end of the spectrum is Luka Doncic.
Who's not.
Right. I mean, he's I don't want to say he's one-dimensional because he's multifaceted on the offensive end, but when it comes to his game, it is really, really great production on the offensive end, and then he's going to be a liability on the defensive end. And so the question now becomes, can you build a roster around him that can protect him defensively that doesn't exacerbate the issues that we're seeing for the Dallas Mavs because they don't have a lot of guys outside of Luka that can get buckets. And last night they did have Kyrie Irving, but you saw when Luka fouled out with 4 minutes to go, it had to be the Kyrie show, and it just wasn't going to be enough. There really wasn't anybody else that you could rely on. So I think it's fascinating to see where Nico Harrison and Michael Finley go for the Dallas Mavericks front office, where they go from here in terms of roster construction, knowing that their backcourt, even though from an offensive skill standpoint, they're one of the greatest in NBA history, defensively, they are deficient. How do you put a roster around them that can protect them, that can allow you to compete against teams that are as well-rounded as the Boston Celtics? How do you do it? Can you do it? Those are the questions that the Dallas Mavericks are going to have to answer this summer.
But you just said something that is so fascinating because you're saying, rightfully so, the Mavs need to find defenders around Luka, right? Because he just doesn't defend. Well, we have highlighted that most guys in the NBA don't play offense and defense. So if you're looking for defenders, one of the problems in this series is they're not scoring enough. So where's the offense then coming from? Because you can't just be like, well, go get Drew Holiday and Derek White. I don't think the Celtics are going to give them.
They're not going to give those guys up, but
right.
You can't find those guys either.
That's the point. So then there's a bigger picture question. Are you just screwed if you're the Mavs? Because you're like, okay, well, how do you find defenders? Well, the best way of finding like elite level defenders, which they've had, by the way, this postseason outside of Luka, is trading Kyrie. Well, you're not going to do that now.
No.
Unless you want to sell high.
Well, are we sure?
Right, but this is the problem.
Are we sure that they're not going to do that? But here's the thing.
No,
I'm not saying that Kyrie wants out, and I'm not saying that he's been malcontent with the Dallas Mavs. By all accounts, it seems like it's been a good marriage.
Yes.
But the question now becomes, can you go any further than what they've been able to do this year? I mean, because right now, based on what we're seeing in the NBA Finals, they're really not close. They're not close. And think about the road that brought them here, and I hate to have this revisionist history, but when you look at how they got to this point, even though they went to 350-win teams, you're talking about catching the Minnesota Timberwolves coming off of a very tough series physically, emotionally, against the defending champs in the Denver Nuggets. They caught a really young Oklahoma City Thunder team, and they caught a LA Clippers team without Kawhi Leonard. So, I mean, I'm not trying to diminish what Dallas has been able to accomplish, but they had a lot of things break right for them in order to get to this position, and we see that they just don't have enough in the way of guys that can score outside of Luka and Kyrie. And then the problem with having Luka and Kyrie both on the court at the same time is when you're on defense, you're playing 3-on-5.
We gotta pause this. We're gonna continue this conversation coming up because there's more on this with Luka. Even though we've just been critical of him, I still feel like we're actually giving him somewhat of a pass in all of this, as crazy as that sounds. Well, the Mavs are gonna